We are going to be making another plant today. I made a little picot stitch succulent in another video, and I really wanted to sort of make something bigger. So we're going to make one of these plants. I've already started making the leaves because I needed to do a little bit of experimenting. I was looking at cacti and succulents, and this one popped up and I just really liked the look of the pink. Not all of the plants have the pink on it, so I've chosen to do the pink one. It's a caladium variant, and we're using a couple of different types of felt and lots of pretty stitches. You could actually probably do less stitches and just rely on the felt to get the contrast of the colours, but we are going to do some nice embroidery on it. So I've got a light green felt, and I've got a tiny bit of wool felt, and I'm just going to put a little bit on. If you look at the picture, there's kind of a slight haziness around the middle and the pink, and I thought I can't actually get that with stitching, but you don't have to use wool felt. I was actually going to use just a tiny bit of watercolour paint before I realised I had this colour already in my house from another project, so that I could use this. But I think a little bit of paint would also work. So I'm just going to put a tiny bit down the middle and then sort of stretching off into some of the sides, and that's it for this. You really just need a tiny amount. I'm not an expert in wool felting. I've only done one project and messed around with it a little bit, but I do think it works. So we're going to do all our top stitching before we put a layer of darker green on the back. And you can see it has a wire. I'm going to show you how to attach that in a second. Got with some very dark pink, and it does need to be quite a thick line down the middle, so I'm going to use 2 strands and just tiny little branches heading off from the centre. We have a florist wire. It's very thin, very bendy, and we're just going to make a line going down the middle of the leaf, and we're going to start by just couching that in place. You can see the wool is a bit wispy, but it's fine. I'm just going to do some very small stitches, so make sure you're on one side of it and come down onto the other side. These will be hidden once you've done stitching down the centre. This just gives the leaf a little bit of strength, so you can shape it a little bit, and a bit of support, because they are, by the time you've got the second layer of felt on and all the stitching, they are quite heavy. You could, if you wanted to, do a second piece of wire going around the outside, so you could really bend some shape into the outside of the leaf. But I find as you're working on the felt, it starts to naturally lose its sort of perfectly flat shape and starts to take on just quite a natural shape of its own. And we will put a second wire in for the stalk on the leaves that are too heavy, but I think that's going to be fine. And I will show you how to do that later. So now that's roughly in place, we're just going to go back up on either side, doesn't really matter as long as your little couching stitches are covered, to create a line, your centre sort of vein of your leaf, which everything else is going to come from. And I think you would want 2 or 3 of these together to make quite a thick line. I'm just doing back stitch really. So I've gone down the centre, and I've also started coming out from the centre as veins on a leaf. That's the same colour and the same 2 strands of thread. We're now going a very slightly lighter pink with 1 strand, and we're just going to come off from the thicker veins with some smaller, thinner veins. Do put quite a bit of pink on, but actually by the time we've finished with the green, the predominant colour is still green, which I think is right looking at those leaves. But it is really nice as a slow stitch project, just doing leaves with all these veins, just going whichever direction you want, taking it where you want to go. And I might actually do one of these leaves in my felt book that I've been making as a bit of a leaf study perhaps, because they're such vibrant and fun leaves to be sewing. So I've finished the lighter pink now. You can just see a little bit of a difference, mainly in the width of the stitches going from 2 to 1. And now I've found a really nice light green that goes really well with this light green felt. So I'm now going to add some extra stitches, but you could leave this because we're still going to add the darker stitches as well. So if you wanted to leave out these light green stitches, you can't really see them until you get really close. So it depends how much embroidery you want to do. But I think if you look really closely and you see all the light green stitches as well, I think that looks pretty good. For your next section of green veins, you're going to need a green that matches your backing fabric, which is more felt for me, so that kind of goes. And if you look at the picture again, it has veins sort of coming down in almost a triangle on each side, so we're going to do those. I've also left some space to just put some odd dark ones in a single green. So at the moment, double green for some big ones near the edge, then some single greens for the centre, before we get ready to sew around the edge onto its backing. So you want to leave a little gap round the edge for your edging stitches. You can't really go wrong with this, however you want to do it. As long as you're happy with it, then it's right, which is my kind of project. This wire does get a little bit in the way as you're stitching, so you might you could just put it on after you've finished decorating the flower. Don't know why I didn't think about that at the time, but there we go. So what you need now is your dark green, and I'm going to use a second wire. I'm going to bend sort of a circle shape. And this is just to keep the leaf sort of stiff. I'm going to twist these two together to make a slightly wider stem. I've used green florist wires, so you don't have to wrap them, but you can get this wrap that goes around wires and flowers, which I'll show you later, which just sort of actually makes it a little bit more stem-like if anyone is taking a really closer look. So that is just going to sort of carry the weight of the leaf a bit more. You could sew wrap one round the edge if you wanted to bend your leaf in different directions, but the natural sort of bend of the felt is enough for me, I think. So it's time to sew on the back. You make sure you're tucking in all your strands as you go along. I'm going to use 2 of the dark thread, and we're just going to do a stitch all the way around. When you start and finish your threads, make sure you're coming up in between the layers of fabric so you can hide any knots. So that is the last leaf done. Now I have wrapped the other wires in florist tape, which is optional. It's this kind of sticky, very slightly sticky tape, not that sticky at all, to be honest. But if you fold it over and stick it back onto itself, then it does stick okay. So I'm just going to roll it over the 2 wires. This took a little bit fiddling and sorting out, so just using gravel. So this is from my driveway. I'm sure no one will notice, it's fine. And I filled it all the way up to the top with gravel, and then the weight of the gravel is helping these stay in place. I'm going to get you a nice shot of where I'm going to put it, because it does look kind of cool. Kind of happy with that.